Hey guys, today we are going to explore lists. So we have already talked about how we can store information using variables. Variables, as you remember, can store only one piece of information. But what happens if we have a lot of information to store? Think about some problems, some challenges that we'd encounter if we needed to store 10 or 100 or 1,000 pieces of information using variables. I think it would get kind of confusing, especially, you think about the naming of all those different variables would get really kind of convoluted and would be difficult to go back and look at your code and know what this variable meant. And so rather than going that route, we can create and use lists instead. So we're going to use, we're going to kind of simulate what lists do. And this is an unplugged activity, so we're not going to be doing coding today, but I just want you guys to get a feel for how lists work and a few different commands that we can use to access our lists. So you can use some Ziploc bags to simulate this. Ziploc bags and like either a sticky notes or some masking tape. What I'm going to do is just use a piece of paper. Well, I'm going to actually use a dry erase board, but you could use a piece of paper, or if you have a dry erase board, you could use that. But basically, so the way we're thinking about this, if you're going to use Ziploc bags, is that the big Ziploc bag would be the list name, and then the smaller Ziploc bags are called our different elements. So they're going to hold the different values. However, you don't need to use a Ziploc bag if you don't have them. Like I said, I'm just going to use my dry erase board. So we can see here they created a list called lunch food. Lunch food is the name of the list. The naming rules for a list are the same as for a variable. There cannot be spaces, and it cannot start with a number. And it's suggested to use camel case, where the first letter is lowercase, and then the start of any other word would be uppercase. So they have lunch food, and then there's 3 different elements here, 3 different values that go into lunch food. They are numbered starting at 0. So there's 3 elements, but the indexes go from 0 to 2. And the different elements are nachos, pizza, and soup. So I want you guys to create your own list that holds between 2 and 4 values. So again, you need to come up with a name for your list, and then, and then you need to come up with 2 to 4 values that go inside that list. Be sure if they're strings, you put quotation marks around them. If they're numbers, you don't need quotation marks. And then also be sure to number the elements of your list starting at 0. So you can pause the video and go ahead and do that, and then come back. Okay, so I came up with a list. It is my grocery list. I have, so again, I have, oops, that's the wrong way. I have the name of my grocery list, or the name of my list is grocery list. And then I have 3 different elements, eggs, bread, and milk. Since those are all strings, I put them in quotation marks. Then below, I know it's kind of hard to see, but there are numbers for each element. So I started with 0, and then 1, and then 2. So 3 different elements. Yeah, so again, our list is made up of elements. Each element has its own index. Indexes start at 0 and count up. The length of the list is how many elements it contains. So this list and my list had 3 elements and indexes from 0 to 2. So yeah, so if you're using Ziploc bags, this is really a nice visual that we can take all those smaller bags, those elements, and fold them up and put them inside the bigger bag. So we can sometimes think about the list as a whole, or sometimes we want to think about the individual elements of the list. All right, and so now we're going to start looking at the different commands that we'll use in our coding when we're creating and accessing lists. So this command here creates a new list and assigns it to a variable. So I create, so this var is my creating a new variable, and I'm naming that variable my list. Equals, that equal sign is that assign, I'm assigning a value to my variable. And the square brackets here indicate that it is going to be a list. Each value in the list is separated by commas. And we'll see that pizza is a string, so that's going to be in quotes. And then the 4 is a number, so it's not in quotations. Right? So now I want you to pause the video again and write out a command that creates the list that you just made. And come right back. Okay, so I just wrote out the command that will create my grocery list. So I said var, and then the name of my list, so grocery list, and equals, so assigns, and then I open the square brackets, and then I have eggs, bread, and milk. Each word, each element is written in quotation marks since they're all strings, and they're each separated by a comma to indicate that they're different elements. Okay? All right, so now we're going to talk about how we can access different values of a list. So remember we said we can talk about the list in general. I can talk about grocery list in general, which will deal with my eggs, my bread, and my milk. Or I can access each individual element of the list. So this expression here, where I have my list and then the square brackets and then a number, this is accessing a specific index. It's accessing the value at a specific index. So let's look at this. So we're looking at this lunch food list. So what does lunch food 0 and lunch food 2 access? Think about it for a second, pause the video, and then come back and we'll talk about it. So lunch food 0 is going to access the value of index 0 in the lunch food list. So my lunch food list at index 0, the value is nachos. So lunch food 0 is going to access nachos. Then lunch food 2 accesses the value of index 2 of the lunch food list. So lunch food at index 2 is soup. So lunch food 0 is nachos, lunch food 2 is soup. So we can also use our lists within expressions. So we can replace a list with a copy of the value that it holds. So, and then we just evaluate the expression just like normal. So let's look at this example where we have 3 plus my number's 1. So my number's 1 is going to access the value of index 1 in the my numbers list. So first thing we need to do is look at my numbers at index 1 is going to be 20. So 3 plus 20 evaluates to 23. Now this one, we have my numbers 0 plus my numbers 2. Well, my numbers at index 0 evaluates to 10, and my numbers at index 2 evaluates to 25. 10 plus 25 evaluates to 35. So you can use the list that you just created to come up with a few different kinds of expressions, right? I'll give you a chance to, you can pause the video and you can do that and then come back. And now we're going to move on to, again, assigning values. Yeah, so assigning values to different indexes, so changing values. So just like in a variable, if you want to assign a new value, that old value is thrown away and it's replaced. So let's go through this, these 3 different lines of commands and kind of check and see what exactly they're doing. So the first one, we have var my numbers equals 10, 25, 20, and 25. So this var my numbers is setting up a new variable, and then this equal sign is saying, okay, we're going to assign a value to this variable. When we have these square brackets, it's telling us that we're going to assign, we're going to create a list, and the list is going to be assigned to that variable. And that list is made up of 3 elements, 10, 20, and 25. 10 is at index 0, 20 is at index 1, and 25 is at index 2. Then in this first line, my numbers 0 equals 5. So what that's saying is we're going to look at the list, my numbers, at index 0, and we're going to assign the value of 5 to that element. So originally, the value at index 0 of my numbers was 10. And then in this next line, we are assigning 5. So 5 replaces 10, and then the 20 and the 25 stay the same. So now I want you to take a look at this. My numbers 2 equals 30. And write down on your piece of paper what you think the list is going to look like after line 2 runs. You can pause the video and then come back. So after line 2, we're going to replace the element at index 2 with 30. So originally there was 25 here, and then after line 2 runs, I think that it's going to have a 30 there in its place. Let's check and see. Yeah. So again, indexes 0 and 1 stay the same, but index 2 is changed to 30. Right. Now I want you guys to, this is another practice round where we're going to run this program, and I want you to pause the video, try to figure out what is going to be the results after all 5 lines of code run, and then come back and we'll talk about it. Right, so let's talk through each line of the code. So in the 0th line, it says var my stuff equals 20 hat pow 5. So I'm creating a new variable called my stuff, and then I'm assigning a value to that variable. I'm not just assigning one value, I'm assigning a list of values to that variable. That list is made up of 4 elements, 20, hat, pow, and 5. Elements are all listed in those square brackets. They're separated by commas. Numbers do not need any quotation marks, but strings do. So that's where the hat and the pow are in quotes. So that takes care of the 0th line. Then the first line, my stuff, 1 equals cat. So I'm going to look at the first index, the index number 1 of the list, and I'm going to assign the value of that to cat. So right now, 20 is index 0, hat is at 1, pow is at 2, 5 is at 3. So I'm going to replace index 1 with cat. So I'm going to change hat to cat. And then my stuff 2 is now being assigned to my stuff 1. So I just assigned my stuff 1 to be cat. So now I'm going to change my stuff 2 to also be cat. Okay? And now my stuff 0. My stuff 0 becomes my stuff 3 plus 10. Well, my stuff 3 is 5. So 5 plus 10 is 15. So now I'm going to assign the value, the element at index 0 of the my stuff list to be 15. And then finally, I get my stuff 3 is equal to my stuff 0 plus my stuff 0. Well, my stuff 0 is equal to 15. 15 plus 15 is equal to 30. So now I assign the value of the element at index 3 of the list, my stuff, to be 30. So what I'm going to end up with is 15, cat, cat, 30. Let's see if I'm right. I am. 15, cat, cat, 30. Cool? Let's keep going. So, yeah, so we can use expressions in the place of a list index. This one kind of threw me off when I first saw it. Okay, so let's go through. I want you guys to go through the program and try it on your own. And then we'll come back and I'll walk through each line with you. So you can pause the video now, work on it, and then come back. Okay, so this one, first line, it says var my stuff equals dog, cat, 310. So I created a list called my stuff. I assigned 4 elements to that list. Dog, cat, 310. 4 elements indexed from 0 to 3. Then that second line says my stuff 2 minus 1 equals tree. So this is what I was talking about, using an expression in place of a list index. So my stuff 2 minus 1, think about what's 2 minus 1 is 1. So now this is saying my stuff 1 equals tree. So I go to my list, I go to index 1, and I'm going to replace the original value of cat, I'm going to replace that with tree. So now I have dog, tree, 310. And then this last one, this last line says my stuff 2 equals my stuff 0. So we want to start, think about like order of operations. We want to start like within the parentheses first. So that my stuff 2, that evaluates to my stuff 2 would be 3. So if I replaced my stuff 2 with 3, then I'd get my stuff 3 equals my stuff 0. So what that's telling me to do is look at my stuff 3 and replace it with the value of my stuff 0. So 10 is going to be changed to the string dog. And I should end up with dog, tree, 3, dog. Right, now we're going to look at three different commands that can change your list. The first one is remove item, which, as you might guess, it removes an element in the given list at a given index. And all the other items to the right are shifted over, and the last index would be removed. So the command looks like this. Again, remove item, and then parentheses, and then there's two components to the command. We have a list, so we have to name, we have to say which list we're referring to. And then the index is saying which index, which element do we want to get rid of. So over here we have var my numbers equals 10, 20, 25. So again, we're creating a variable called my numbers, and we're assigning a value, a list value to that variable, 10, 20, 25 being assigned to that variable. And then in line 1, we're going to remove item from my numbers at index 1. So I go into my list, I see 10 is at index 0, 20 is at index 1, and 25 is at index 2. So if I'm going to remove the value, the element at index 1, that means I'm going to remove 20. And again, all the other elements are shifted over, and the last element is just removed. So 25 is shifted over, and it becomes the element at index 1, but 20 was removed. And now let's talk about, I want you guys to pause the video and see if you can come up with what the list will look like after line 2 is run. So after line 2 is run, after we've removed the element at index 0 in the my numbers list, what we're going to end up with is just my numbers and then just the value 25 at index 0. Right, now our second command that we're going to learn is append item. Append item. So the append item command adds an element to the end of a list. A new index is added to the list to create a place for the element, and that new item is placed in that new index. And this command also has two pieces to it, where we first have to name the list that we're talking about, that we want to add something to, and then the second piece is just naming the item that we're going to add. So we have this example. We have, again, var my numbers, creating a variable called my numbers, and it is a list of only one element right now. That element is 10, and it's at index 0. Now we're going to do in line 1, append item. Append item to the my numbers list. We're going to add 50. So the new list becomes 10 and then 50. Now you can think about for a minute, what is the list going to look like after line 2 is run? Pause the video, write it down, and then come back. And you should see that your list becomes 3 elements long. And we have 10, 50, then 100. Okay. Now for the last one, we have insert item. Insert item. So that, as again you might guess, inserts an item, inserts an element into a list at the given index. So that remove item just kind of takes one away, append adds it to the end. Insert allows us to put something in between other elements. And then all other all the other items in the list just move over to the right. So the insert item command has 3 different components to it: list, index, and item. So first we have to name our list, then we have to tell it where in the list do we want to add a new item to. So we have to give it an index number, and then we have to tell it what the item is that we want to add in. So we have this list called nums, var nums equals 10, 50. So 10 is at index 0, 50 is at index 1. Now we're going to do insert item. So first we have to tell it the list, so it's list nums. And then we want to tell it the index, so where do we want to put this new item? I want to put this new item at 1. And then what is the item that I want to add to the list? That item is 20. So I have nums 1, 20. So at index 1, I'm going to put in 20. And again, all the other elements move over to the right. So the 50 moves now to become index 2. And now let's take a minute, pause the video, and try and figure out what's going to happen after line 2 is run. So line 2 says to insert a new item into our list nums at index 1, and that new item we're inserting is 100. So I'm going to insert that 100 into index 1. And then what was already at index 1 and at index 2 just gets shifted over. So the 20 becomes index 2 and the 50 becomes index 3. Right? Now let's do a couple practices with these new commands. So I want you guys to, you can pause the video again and try to run this program and decide what is going to be the length of the list at the end. There's a little reference up here of what the commands mean of remove item, append item, and insert item. All right, so pause the video, give it a try, and then come back. Okay, so let's talk through this. So in the first line, we have, we're just creating this new variable, a list, and we are assigning 3 different values to that list. 20, hat, and pow. 20 is at index 0, hat is at index 1, pow is at index 2. And then lines 1 and 2 use the append command. Append, remember, adds an item to the end of the list. So we're going to add 5 to the end of the list, and then we're going to add 10 to the end of the list. So right now we have 5 elements within our list. And then in line 3, we have remove item. So we're going to remove item from a list. Which item are we going to remove? We're going to remove index 1. So index 1 was hat. So we're going to get rid of hat. And now we're left with 20, pow, 5, 10. That second piece. And now we want to insert an item. Insert an item into a list. We want to insert that item into index 10 or index 2. And we want to insert bang. We want to insert bang in for index 2. So now we get 20, pow, bang, 5, 10. So our list at the end has a length of 5 items. 5 items. All right, and we have one more to do. I think it's just, oops, sorry. One more to do, practice round. So read through the program, and see if you can come up with what the list will look like at the end. Give you a minute to try it out, then we'll talk through it. Okay, so let's talk through each line of the code. So the first one, var blist equals 25po. So we're creating a new variable called blist, and the value that we're assigning to that variable is a list made up of 3 elements, 2, 5, and po. Then we're going to append item. Append item, again, is to add an item on to the end of the list. So I'm going to append an item onto blist, and that item that I'm going to append, the item that I'm going to add onto the list, is going to be blist2 plus ta plus blist0. So blist2 was po, blist0 was two. And then when we put those all together, we'd get po, te, to. So now our list becomes 2, 5, po, potato. And then we're going to insert an item. We're going to insert an item into blist, and we're going to insert that item into index 2 minus 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. So we're going to insert it into index 1. And that item that we're going to add in there is go. So now our list becomes 2 go 5 po potato. And then the final line is remove item. We're going to remove item from blist. We're going to remove the item that's in index 2. So what's in index 2? It's 5. So now we just have 2 go po potato. So our list is made up of 4 elements. 2 go po potato. All right? So that is the end of our exploration of lists. I want you guys to take a look at the couple videos that I have linked in the graphic organizer, as well as finish up that graphic organizer and your check for understanding in code.org. All right? Let me know if you have questions. I'd love to hear from you. Hope you're having an awesome day.